You have your mom, but hey, everybody, welcome in the room. It is the Sunday sit down with Fennell, and I've been looking forward to this all day because I feel like Sunday we had the Friday power lunch. It was just such a gut punch when we had right after the other, the voting rights gutted, then the Virginia Supreme Court decision. And I'm telling you right now, it is on the news constantly. Have you been following it since Friday?
Yes, I have. I've been following it all since Friday, and I made a special effort to watch the news when I could to ensure that I wouldn't miss anything.
Right.
And and I will tell you also, I don't know how much is being read, but I felt really, I felt I had already felt like after the election was over, before the decision came out on Friday, that we ought to say something to our voters to thank them for coming out, for all the people who volunteered,
Right.
because it feels like something happens and then it's like dark and it's like nobody really hears anything. They're just like, well, we went out and voted. So what about that? So we won. So what about that? Because it gets me thinking about these year-round actions. If we think that we're supposed to do something year-round and that it's not supposed to stop, how do we keep in touch with our voters all the time? So I was already thinking that something should happen to voters to say, "Hey, thank you. We all put forth this big effort, and here we are." And then before we could actually do that,
Right.
Friday came, and
Yeah.
then it became more important to
Oh,
make sure that we said something to voters. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah. So I've been following it too, and I could say that I don't think I fully recovered. When I read your article that you wrote about for everybody that voted yes, I think that was the first time that emotionally I sort of let myself feel how I really felt. I mean, I think I was holding this in. And for everybody in the room, when this happened, when our legislators decided to go ahead and do this ballsy move, before the election that they were going to redistrict in response to everything, we were all like, okay, well, you know us, we responded, we went all in. We really worked when we say 7 days a week when that went down. And I'm not making that up. It felt like it. And we were just in the mode to get this done. And so it really hurt in so many levels. And I think also watching Tennessee, watching the Justins on the floor, the Gloria, who we know, who has been on our show also on the floor, fighting these white supremacists. And those, could I say it's Mother's Day? Could I say motherfucker? Those motherfuckers on the floor, um, these white guys in Tennessee, the state where the Ku Klux Klan actually was founded in Tennessee. I didn't know that. I thought it was South Carolina, but it's Tennessee. So you have the founding of that. Martin Luther King is killed there in Memphis, right? You have all this history. And they're back there giggling away like they're enjoying this. And I feel like I said to my husband, I'm like, this is so sickening. It's so sickening what we're witnessing right now. And so what's your thought on this when you're watching all of this? Just, just what you see in Tennessee and all the other states, what we saw happen with the Supreme Court, you know, what is your reaction
So
in general when like this, where are we in your mind?
So so I'll tell you this, and first of all, happy Mother's Day to everyone. It feels like a different kind of day for me. Miss Margaret would tell me, "Fennell, you have to sit back sometimes and enjoy yourself. It's okay. It's okay to find a little joy." But I have to tell you, with all the stuff that's happening, I do feel guilty trying to find a little bit of joy because
Yeah.
it really is frightening for me. And I do say to my husband, I say to Sam, I say, "I'm scared, but
Yeah.
I'm undaunted. I am scared, but I am undaunted. I am not fearful. I am fearless." But in terms of what is happening in the country and watching Tennessee was eye-opening and scary, and especially looking at how gleeful they were.
Yes.
Understanding the history of Tennessee, they were just gleeful. And that just tells me the evil and the cruelty of what they're thinking about taking this power away from this group of people who look like me.
Right.
And what they say is Tennessee is not the end, it's just the beginning. but we have an opportunity. And I think that's what's really scary to folks. There are two things that frighten me. The first thing that frightens me is that not enough people are paying attention. That's the
Yeah,
first thing that frightens me. And then the second thing that frightens me is not understanding the power that we must use and leverage in order to come out of this. And it won't be quick. And I think that understanding that we got to get to November. We got to get
right,
to the Congress, right? We have to win Congress. And then there's more work to do because we still have this president. So we have to win Congress and we really do have to take the Senate. That means that we have to be more aggressive than we even were before this started. And I'm wondering if the folks who are out there, the folks who are running the DCCC, the
right.
DNC, if they understand this moment and if they have the power to do what they're supposed to do, because we have the power to do what we're supposed to do. And that's what I want to get to tonight, because you've been talking about it, is what
Right.
can we do? What do we
Yeah.
have the power to do based on the decision that happened this week for us and based on the decision that happened in terms of what they did with Calais versus Louisiana?
Yeah, I'm curious too with people in the room, like what I on Friday, I was a little upset about some things. Some things I was feeling pretty, I don't even want to use the word good. But when Don Scott, our leader, who I admire so much for so many reasons, such a badass. But when he said in a public statement that he abides by the Supreme Court, or what did he say? I respect the decision of the Supreme Court. And I thought to myself, why the hell would you say that? Who respects this decision? No one legally respects it. It was a really bad decision. If you look at the technicality of the decision, if you look at the stretch that they made, if you look at the political partisanship of it. So for me, and we talk about this all the time, that messaging, leadership, and how we talk about something and frame it is so important because it sticks. And I think it's wrong to come out and say after everything and looking at the decision, just it's okay to say, hey, they made this decision, but this is what I have a problem with. And I have a problem with it because on this technicality and it's politicized and the voice of the voters, two general assemblies have said that this is what they're going to do. And I read a really interesting assessment of this by the Congressman, was it McClellan, was talking about that. Maybe it was Sam Shirazi, who we listen to Federal Fallout. If they invalidated this because they said we didn't post it on the courthouse and all that. Now you got to remember there's two things they're looking at when they updated the statute. They sort of updated in one place but not the other. So really they should be following what it says in the Constitution. But they said this thing about posting it on courthouses. Well, guess what? The referendum that the redistricting amendment with that passed in 21, they didn't post it on the courthouse either. So they're saying, here's an idea. Let's go back and invalidate the map that we're going to run on and then just draw new maps. Because so you're hearing all these ideas floated. And why I think it's so important for people like Governor Spanberger and Don Scott to come out fighting. I mean, you could be respectful, but you should also call it what it is. Because Glenn Youngkin right now has no trouble going out saying what we did was unconstitutional. Democrats try to do this unconstitutional thing. They're lying, cheating, and stealing. So he's framing it the way he wants. We need to come out and frame it. So that disappointed me. But what I've seen since then, actually, is people talking about plan B, different ideas. And I like that. I like that they're actually considering it. I think that a couple of things we talked about was, what we could do in response. Then there's what we can do. So what's on your mind for what we can do? And then all of our elected maybe can roll around the mud with some of these other ideas, you know.
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
I know you have
So,
an idea, don't you?
oh, no, I'm glad you asked that. Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is that we have to start helping people understand how the Supreme Court works in plain language and how the decisions that they make affect our lives every day. And we can do that. And we can talk about that because we've talked a lot about some of the decisions, even some of the administrative decisions about how they shape how we go back and look at criminal court cases, and that's been very bad. So I think we can go back and we can frame that. So that's one thing. We have to talk about it.
Right.
But I also think that we have to talk about how we got here. One of the things that I find really interesting, Miss Margaret says this all the time, is that we have to get to the root cause of what ails us in terms of why are we struggling with this all the time?
Right.
Why is Tennessee doing this? Why are these things happening? And we have to acknowledge the problem of race in this country and what we're going to do about it and how it sits on so many of the decisions that are made. But
Yes.
what the Supreme Court did will affect all of us. And it is a fight against this multiracial society that we're trying to deliver on. So you had this idea some time
Right.
ago about postcards. And
Yes.
I think that that is an opportunity that we have. And
Yes.
here's what I think we can do. There are a couple of things that we can do that I think are really smart. So here's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That we can shape public opinion with postcards. So we're not going to change the course behavior. They're probably not going to see the postcards, but they will know that something's happening because it'll be in the news when a million postcards get sent to the post office where they're supposed to be. So that
Right.
is one thing we can do. We can shape public opinion by letting people know why we think that this decision hurts our country. And I think the important thing about that in terms of how we do that is, when you talk about some of the worst cases that have happened that the Supreme Court has done, comparing this to Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson, Dobbs decision, making them look at history, look
Yes.
at what
Look
they
at
have
it.
done, look at how horrible this decision is that these six justices did. They
Yes.
did this to our country. Look at where we're sitting right now, and they did that. And I think we can frame that. I think we could also do a campaign that is to voters that help them see what is happening and why it's so important. I don't have the framing yet or how it should be framed, but I know that we have to get people around this country, every single American who believes in democracy, who is not a MAGA person, should be
Right.
looking at this and should care about this. And they will only know about it if we tell them about it. Because I will tell you,
Right.
we're talking about this today, but I can tell you that most people are just enjoying their Mother's Day and they have no
Well,
idea.
I
You
hope
know, we
they're
went out
happy. Exactly.
we went out for a walk today, and there's this couple, riding on their little golf cart, and they were just like, hi, and they're waving at us. And quite frankly, I'm just going to say this right now: if you are a white person and you are my neighbor, and you are going to drive by and say, "Fanal, I am so sorry. I can't imagine how this decision is affecting you." If you're gonna just drive by and wave, I know what that means to me. You're either a MAGA person or
Uh-huh.
you're a person who doesn't give 2 snaps about me. I'm just sorry, I'm just gonna say it. When they talk to you about the weather, I'm telling you, they are MAGA people or they're frightened, and in either case, they're not my friend.
They're
You're
not.
not helping me. You're
I
not supporting my cause. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. At this point, especially with what's happening in this country, and this is gonna be a lot to unpack going forward. I was reading, Alpha Woolen is now on Substack. She's somebody that's been to our summit, a Black leader I respect, a really fantastic woman that I've just gotten to know. Sh and she was writing about, I think, the Democratic Party and how she feels about, are they really being inclusive? Are they really being really, including them at the table of power? And I think that we're gonna be returned to a lot of this kind of, feelings, and for good reason. I think we need to be seen as fighting for all people. I think the Voting Rights Act, when we frame it just about around Black people, yes, it's an attack on Black people, but I think that white people have to be responsible for this too and have to know that this impacts them, right? Everybody has skin in the game, literally. But I know that I can't imagine what it feels like to live in your skin and feel that direct attack on you. And when I watch in Tennessee and the way these young men, the two Justins, are kind of fighting for the future, and they really see it and feel it. And I think what I'm watching, though, is that Black people are rising up around this. I think they really poked a big bear, and I wonder what that's going to look like. It can go a couple different ways that the Democratic Party doesn't really decide how it's going to fight this fight, right? Because a major part of voters in our party, the most consistent, best voters toward progress, are our Black voters. Really, our Black people in general have been pushing this country to live up to its values. So the Democratic Party has to as well. So how they respond to this Voting Rights Act, how they respond and fight about it in the media, how they stand up for people is going to be really key to people feeling they're going to come out and really going to vote. And I don't know what your response is to that. I mean,
So
don't what are your
so
feeling on that level?
so I wanna say 2 things because I do think this is a really important moment in
Right.
history. And I keep thinking, what else am I
Oh,
supposed to
look
be
at
doing?
Alpha
And I
joined. I just talked about her. She just Alpha Woolen just joined. Alpha, was your ears burning? I was just talking about you. I said I was just talking
so
about how awesome you are.
you
I just laughed. I said, "Oh my god, I'm just talking about Alpha and she's in the room. Welcome. Great to see you." I have been um yeah, I have been following her writing and I just say to everybody if you can follow her and subscribe to her, that would be great. But I'm going to read what she says. But I'm sorry I interrupted you, friend. Go ahead.
so it's okay. So this is what I'm gonna say. So it is really emotional, when you watch, people on TV talk about it, when you watch Tennessee, and I watched Tennessee this morning purposefully.
Yes.
And quite frankly, I thought the anchor was gonna cry, and I thought
Yeah.
that the Justin who was talking was gonna cry, and I listened to Eddie Glaude, and I thought he was gonna cry. It just felt so, raw, because they were talking about, this Memphis area, and they
Yes.
showed a clip that is 60%, Black, and they just divided it into 3 pieces, and they just became voiceless.
Oh,
And they were the history of it, the pain of it, all the work that's been done,
right.
it was painful, but they are not giving up. And what they said is, "It's not just their fight, it is our fight, it is everyone's fight."
It has to
And
be.
what I say is, for this fight, no one person, no one group can do it on their own. Everybody is required to bring their coalition to the table. Black people are required to bring their coalition, white people, Asian people, Hispanic people, everybody is required to bring their full coalition to the table. We didn't get rid of slavery with just Black people. It was a coalition, a multiracial coalition that made that happen. So I just think that we all have to figure that out and we all have to talk about this. What is really happening? That
Right.
is what must happen. And I will also say this. It is not, we can't just think that, when we win this election in '26 because we will win because we must.
Right.
We must win the Congress. We must. And so that means that fight becomes more aggressive. But we also have to look ahead to what we expect our Congress people to do, which means that these people who are running, we have to ask them really hard questions about how they're gonna frame this and how they're gonna
That
talk
last
about
week.
this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think
So
it and I think it's and also it has to be authentic, you know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
we saw some bad votes from our some of these Congress people that won in Virginia, Vidman and Suhas, I'll just call them out. They did some bad votes. And there's been folks that have voted with this goodwill thing. And this is why we're here. They've been acting like Re- Republicans are going to be fair players. Go and like you said, let's just go back and just go over to say Merrick Garland, that whole thing, how they treated Obama, how back then, that kind of fight there, that lost us 3 seats, right? So these kind of fights are showing us, and that's why I'm really glad what we did in Virginia, because when you go back to look at where we've made really missteps, it's always underestimating our opponent. It is going to be one ruthless, doesn't give a shit. It's going to do whatever it takes to win, and will get up the next day happy, smiling, and giggling. Does not care. And so I think that we have to like make sure we understand that. And you're right. I am seeing people talk about this redistricting and what they're maybe going to do with the plan B. Some of the ideas do seem a little far-fetched, but I think it's worth a try to see what we can do about these particular maps. But for us in the grassroots, we always like to get down to work. So I want to return back to what we can do. Um, One, the postcard idea. I know tonight there's a meeting with Indivisible, and I really floated the idea, can we send and I almost think it'll be really impactful to do the postcard campaign to the Virginia Supreme Court. And because we can do it on the top level. But I really believe what's unexpected is if we have a campaign where just personally every voter sends, uh, you know, postcard, a letter, whatever, to the Virginia Supreme Court. They need to hear it and see it and feel it. Okay. I also think that I'm hoping this week we organize an assembly down together with, I think we should also assemble. I think we couldn't do it on Friday in the way we needed to. But so I think that I don't know what people feel like, but let's make sure we do that. And then I think, like you said, we get busy really winning, um, really making sure that we do we flip more seats than even expected. But
Yeah.
that's
This is what I think. I think I heard or
right.
read somewhere that they were going to take this to the Supreme Court,
Yes.
this ruling that they were gonna take it there. And what I think is really interesting is that in Louisiana, there's typically supposed to be this 31-day rule where if
Right.
a decision is made, you have 31 days, and if they're beyond that, they have to stick with the old maps, of which they have done every time something has been brought up with voters that they've made them, especially if it impacted Black voters or voting rights, they've made them abide by that 31 days, and
Right.
so they have to wait 2 years before something could be done. But in this case, which is why we have all this chaos happening, is because they said, "No, you don't have to wait the 31 days." And so to
Yeah.
me, because you overturned that and you didn't follow that procedure, then
Right.
why are you gonna make us follow this procedure? Now, I will tell you what is interesting about this is that there probably are some things in there that we didn't do right in Virginia. And when I hear Mark Elias talk about the fact that, like Florida, for example, they
Yes.
didn't follow their constitution, he's like, the day that they filed to redo their map, I'm going to file against them. Well, if Mark Elias is going to do that and it's going to be based on procedure, then if he wins, it feels like, So I'm just not sure about that. And I'm not an
Well,
expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm just saying if there are guidelines for the state and you can overrule those if you take them to court, then if that happens, then it makes it difficult for other states to say, "Hey, you're not following your guidelines for your state, so therefore, we're gonna overrule you." So, I just don't know.
yeah.
But beyond that, what I would say is we have I hate to use this word, but we have to really educate our country and our people about what's at stake here. This really is Project 2025.
Yes.
It is happening. It is white supremacy
Yes,
on
it
steroids,
is.
and it's happening in plain sight. And we have to tell people that, and they have to believe us that this is really a situation that we would have never have imagined ourselves. But if they're overturning decisions like Dobbs, if
Yes.
they're overturning decisions like the
Right.
voting rights, what is next in terms of what this country will do?
Well, I
We
think
know
this
that
is it.
we had the Japanese internment, that was a
Yeah,
decision made by
I
the
know.
Supreme
I
Court,
know.
and I'm just saying, we must let people know clearly and clear-eyed
Yes.
what this is all about and what a dangerous position we're in, but also what we must do going forward because we are smarter than we were back then. We have
Are
more
we?
resources than we had.
Yeah.
Well, some of us are smarter than we were back then. But the point is that listen, our ancestors fought, and they fought with less resources than we have today. And so we have to fight. We have to build coalitions. We have to use the resources that we have. This is serious stuff, and it's bigger than this decision. It is what all
Yes.
of it means, and we have to be able to explain that to
Well,
people.
I'm over here smiling only because, I have to say I'm enjoying the chat because people are fired up. People are just we have some badass kick-ass people in this chat that want to postcard, kick people, fight, I'm reading it going, "Yeah," and I agree. Laura, Belle's in there, and she's ready to, go scorched earth, which I love, and I think that that's how we have to feel because truthfully, after all the work we put into this, it does feel like, so stolen that it's really and maddening that there has to be accountability for this, and so I do think making sure we do something so the Supreme Court hears us is really important. Um, and then, like, back to the procedure thing, if you really do go look at it, it was almost like, in the Bill Clinton thing when when he had to argue about what is was like, well, what is? They were arguing about what election means and when
Yeah,
it's election. And like I said, it was kind of goofy. And really, when you read legal people about it, it was just quite apparent that the four justices just didn't like the idea of redistricting. They just didn't want to do it. And they came up with really lousy reasons. Because if it was a good reason, three other justices didn't agree with them. And I think that shows me it was totally political. And I think, to your point, when we see all of this happening all over, it's all connected. It is all totally full on white supremacy. It is here, it is loud, and we know it's only going to get really worse. So, and some other ideas I was thinking of, I was thinking Memphis, when you talk about such a great area, Nashville, Memphis, all these places, we talk about the economies. And I'm wondering the strategies and just thinking outside the box in those areas where tourists come, you know, we're, we're, we're Black musicians, and the whole richness of the culture and all the food that they come there for is the actual experience that this culture that would not be there if it wasn't for the people, the, Black culture, the music. It's almost like an interesting kind of culture of boycott. We also give money to all those southern states. And I wish we can think of ways that states can just withhold a lot of tourism and funds to these places. Like, no one, Alabama, the football and all this stuff. I mean, I think long term, I mean, anybody that wants to turn on and watch Alabama shouldn't be watching that football team anymore. I don't care how good they are or whatever. It's like, it's like we just gotta figure out creative ways, like we did when they were trying to deny people a trench. It was like the bathroom debate in some of these states. The sports culture got involved in it. I think it's time for sports culture to step up to the plate. When I'm watching TV, I'm like, these men on there are acting like nothing's going on, right? I think if you think about who's on playing these sports, where is their line in the sand where they're going to want to play for Alabama? The Southern football teams, like, you know what I mean? Like, I
So,
wonder, there's a
yeah,
move that should be there. This
yeah.
is
So
important.
So I did read today Ryan Clark, I think he's a football player, and, he said that the players should not go and play
I
in those
didn't
places.
I didn't know
The
that.
places where people are denied their right to vote, their right, to democracy. He said players should not go there. I think what will happen is I do think that we have to sit a moment and figure out strategically how we do this and the tactics that are the tactics that work. I think that there's a role for everyone. There's a role for us as individuals. There's roles for people who have political PACs. There are roles for grassroots. There
Right,
is roles for our Congress. Congress can do some things. They can rewrite a piece of legislation. Now we have Trump there, so we have to think 2026, 2028, and then on from there. And I do think that when I read Substack, they're some of the smartest people that I can't imagine, and they're just these smart people out there with these great ideas, and they're from all walks of, different kinds of careers. Why don't we have a think tank?
right.
The Heritage Foundation is the one that came up with Project
We do
2025.
have a think
I
tank.
don't
It's called our Wednesday meeting.
what I'm saying is
Yeah.
some of these folks should come together and start to put together roadmap to 2030,
Well,
which is
I
really thinking about the next 6 months and on and on and on, what we do, and really giving voice to our legislatures in terms of what we expect them to do. They don't have to take it, but we should be talking to them about, all of these ideas and what they can do. If they have the idea, great. I
right.
would love to hear it because
I'm
they should be
curious.
finding ways to
Right.
inspire us is
Well,
what
I'm
they should be
curious for
doing.
the people that listen in, and thank you, folks, being here. There's some really, great comments going on in here, and your opinion on this, because I think people are going to have sort of a different, opinion about, like, how to, like you said, how to respond to this. And when you think about the DNC, I'll just say that I was down at the Women's National Democratic Club. I went to the Save Democracy or Summer Democracy thing on Saturday, and I was a little bit thinking about, they're talking about messaging and the consultant stuff, and it was sort of like the same old stuff about the messaging and this whole thing about, like, this paragraph works with the voter, this doesn't work. We talk about affordability here, and I just thought about the whole thing with the consultant class and about, like, how we're going to really talk about this moment. And I think the most important thing to do, and this was what the argument that these people were having on a Substack or whatever it was, you know, h do we talk out loud about what we wanna do? Like, do we say to them, "We're going to do this to the court. We'll we're going to make sure that when we get into Congress," because folks in the room, understand this, we can win in '26, we can win in '28, but if we have the same Supreme Court, it doesn't matter. We can
Right.
get in there and anything we wanna pass, they've done it before. They did it to Biden all the time. They did it to with the healthcare stuff. Like, they will not rule in our favor, so we have to change the court. We have to start talking about it. So the debate was, do we talk about our accountability out loud? Like, especially with the people bombing and killing people right now on the Venezuela boats. Those people need to go to the gulag, man. They need to be held accountable. We need to say this stuff out loud, or do some people are like, if you say too much, it's always that debate. But I think people need to know our roadmap. That's why they want to vote for us. Are we going to just sort of,
Right.
get in there and talk about affordability again? I think we have to talk about it all. And I think we have to say that we're going to do this when we get in, and the Supreme Court, this is what we're going to do, and people are going to support it. That's what I think. But
I agree 100%. We love Jess Piper, so I
yes,
just had put in some information about the public schools in Missouri where they're taking all of the funding or just a big chunk of it, and they're gonna give it to vouchers. They're taking it from their public schools. And I just find that so hard to fathom, and so this is how I think about this. So let's just say that you are a mother in Missouri,
right,
and you have children in public schools, and I say to you, "Catherine, um, we're gonna take the money from your public school, and we're
right.
gonna give it to the rich people in the next neighborhood so that they can get vouchers to send their kid to school. So as long as you vote Republican, they're gonna keep taking that money from
Yeah,
your school, and they're gonna give it to the rich people. I just wanna be sure you're good with that. So are you good with that?" And I think you have to say that to people and then let them say, "Yes, I am good. Take the money from my kids and from their school, and take the money from any kind of services that we should be provided and give it to the rich people because my family, we're good with that." And
yeah,
I think you have to talk to people like that to say, are you good with that? Because I just wanna know if you're good with that. Are you good with your Medicaid in terms of the fact that you're not gonna have a hospital because 'cause they're gonna close it, but guess what? They're gonna be living high on the hog
right.
down the street in the next neighborhood. Just wanna know if you're good with that. Because if you are,
You
you
good with
keep
that.
on voting Republican because they think you're good with it, and I'm guessing because the way you voting, that you're good
You're
with
good
that.
with that.
And I
Well,
think you have to
yeah,
make people decide if they're good with that or not.
and I think that's why it's so important that that elected leaders that have the big bullhorn get out there and talk the real talk, the authentic talk about what's happening. Even in this decision in Virginia, I don't wanna hear about, "Oh, I'm gonna agree with the court, I think whatever." No, I think it's okay to disagree with the court and still be a reasonable human being. And I think if you say to them, "Look, when Democrats get elected, we take back the House, we're gonna hold people accountable that broke the law. We're gonna hold people accountable that killed people on these fishing boats." Because I'm gonna tell you, what we're gonna see is when they attacked a ferry, it was like 16, they won't show this one, Senator Warner, I think, saw it, but there are some of these, bombings that they will not reveal to the public that where they killed people because it's that hideous. Because it was a ferry that they dropped a bomb on, like a little transport that they killed these people. They're up to maybe 200 people now that they've killed in little weird, I don't know what they're calling this thing. Those people are gonna be held accountable, and they followed and I think people need to know what we plan to do. And I think when we talk about the courts, it's not like, "Oh, we wanna stack the court so it goes our way." It's really logical that when we went back to 9 justices, we didn't have the amount of courts we have now, and we have actually an expanded kind of districts, but not enough judges. And then the cases go slow. There's really not enough justice. I think Jamal Bully was talking about a plan how you can sort of really, um, actually a better process of how we decide these cases. The Supreme Court has too much power, and then they actually are really weighing on things they shouldn't. I think if you bring them along, and it's not about trying to say we want a Supreme Court in our favor, but I think people are seeing some of the things the court is doing that they would understand why it needs to be expanded. So, you can't just, float cases And back to this one more thing, back to the thing about our case going to the Supreme Court. It has to go to a federal court first, and the problem is, if it goes there, it most likely won't get out of that court to go to the Supreme Court, and that's the problem. It's the stage I think it has to go to. I think it has to go to a federal court, and then from the federal court, the redistricting case would have to go to the Supreme Court, and most likely will never see the daylight out of the federal court. That's
Yeah, the good news is that we can fix it for the next election,
But I think what I'm trying to say, I think we need to tell people, and I think we need to tell voters in this particular midterm, and
yeah,
that we
I'm not disagreeing with that.
I know
We're
you're
over time. I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I wanna be clear about is this in terms of the Supreme Court, is that they're out of touch with the majority of the
they
people.
really are.
And that's what the purpose of the postcards are for, to the Supreme Court or to whoever we send them, is to let them know that they're out of step with the people and that the people are watching. We're not asking them to do anything that is unfair. We expect justice to be blind and fair. And based on the decisions that they're making, anyone can look at it and see that these decisions are the decisions like the worst cases that we've seen in our history. That's what we want to do. I think
Yeah,
the second thing that we want to do is ensure that we are talking to people,
yeah,
everyday people, our friends and neighbors. It is no longer acceptable to say, I don't talk about politics.
yes,
Everything is politics, and we all have to get comfortable with that. If there is someone in your life and they're not interested in hearing about politics, then they're not interested in your life because the way that you live,
right.
the taxes you pay, the groceries you buy, the gas you spend, every single thing, the childcare you have or don't have, the services you have or don't have, all happen because of the way our government functions, and it is not functioning well right now. So we have to be comfortable talking about it. We have to get comfortable talking about what ails this country, which is race and racism and how white supremacy is rearing its head and it's time for us to punch it down. So I'm just saying, as I conclude today, those are the things that I care about is what can Congress do? What can our state
We
people
do.
do? What can we do as individuals? What can our groups do? And that's what we have to get working on tomorrow.
I'm laughing well, Martin has a lot to say here, and Martin, I have to laugh when he said, "Have you ever heard the expression, 'You can't fix stupid'?" Yeah, my mother-in-law, used to have an expression, you can't shove smart into stupid." She used to say, can't you can't just shove smart
Yeah,
into stupid," and that's true, and you can't fix
but
racist. No, I
no,
probably not, and but I think, like you said, we have to address what it is for now. We gotta talk about race and racism and we can go on all night, and I know that we've gone over.
but I wanna say this for Martin, you can't fix racism. I've been saying this for a long time
Right.
now. You guys always laugh at me when I say it that
We never
you
laugh
don't
at
have to
you.
like me. You do laugh at me when I go, "You don't have to like me. You don't have to wanna
True.
eat dinner with me, but we
Right.
can agree, even if you don't like Black people and you don't wanna ever sit with them at all, whatever, guess what? I don't wanna live under a dictator either, and I don't
Yes.
want someone to tell me what to do either. So if we can agree on that, we can live together. And you know what I can do to make sure that we get treated equally? We can have good laws that make sure that equality happens for everybody, and you can be as racist as your ass wanna be. That's what I'm
Mm,
saying.
I don't know. I think one thing that I'm really concerned about for our country in general is that, be we cannot thrive. We know that in other countries where women aren't free and people aren't free, that we don't have a thriving economy. So I really feel like we're stuck. And after watching some of the things that I see kind of our infrastructure not being invested in, I think the whole thing with the racism issue and the sexism, the patriarchy is really, really rotting our country. And until we really address it, and I think, yeah, people are gonna be wacky, and, of course, we're never gonna fix racism totally because there'll always be somebody we're gonna hate on, right? This is the natural humanness of it. At the same time, this whole thing is killing our country, and it really is. We're gonna fall, and we have to decide, are we gonna deteriorate like Rome? Are we gonna fall apart? And I think we have to make a decision, and it's really, this is where I feel like the moralness of it, the corruption of it is not it's not a healthy body. And when I think about going back to Linda Hersham and our Civil War analogies, is that we're really at that crux again, where these I remember a couple years ago, when we thought about, will we be at this point where we see 60 years of Jim Crow again? We're there right now in
Yeah.
the decision. We are there right now and, in the 1890 point, and we have to stop it, and we have to call it what it is. And let's say tonight, one way is that we do this Supreme Court thing. We make a decision to do it. We make these cards. I think we should put some of the bad decisions on and to remind them all the stupid things they did. And we see them, and you did another stupid thing. And I think we should just make sure they know how racist and stupid they are, and that we see them. And I think we should be totally clear about the idea. So we're definitely going to do that, and I know we'll get people to do it. So I want to wrap up though. Again, going back to we went over tonight, but it's Mother's Day, and we wanted to make sure that Mama got some time to punch people out. Boom, boom.
So someone said that they can't see other people's chats, and so
Oh,
next
they
time we'll
can't?
fix that so they can't. So yeah. Um, Janice
How
says she can't see other people's
I could
chats.
see everybody's
Well, of
chat, so
course
I'm
you can.
well, no, but I'm okay, that's weird, and I don't know, uh, I'll have to look into that, folks. If anybody had I just assumed when I see the live chat that everybody could see each other, so if there's a way I can fix it, I'll definitely look into it, but geez, you guys are
So
missing some good stuff in here, some
so
funny
I just they really did. So and they can't see it, but I wanted to thank my family for coming today,
Oh,
and I
great.
wanted to also say to Alpha that she's absolutely right. People don't understand our history, which is why they don't wanna teach history. They don't want people to understand what's happening, and that's why we're behind right now, but we're gonna catch up because we're gonna start screaming from everywhere about what's happening here and why people need to know about it. That is what we can do individually.
Yeah, she was on Inside Scoop and a presenter, but I've been following her writings, and I was thinking to myself, that's somebody we should have back on the show. She was at the summit last year. She brought some great of the. I'm just blanking on Margaret Franklin and some of the people that ran for Congress. She was doing all that
And
great work.
they're there now.
Yeah, great
Alright, so
work.
we said we were leaving 12 minutes ago, and we're
I
still
know, I get to go back to my bolognese. Everybody, it's always great to see everybody, and, hey, this Friday, our show on the Friday Power Lunch, we have church. I wanna call it the separation of church and state, but it's I don't Belle knows it by heart. Go ahead, Belle, and it type it in there, but we will be talking about that, and Jennifer McClellan is coming on Friday. That's what I'm hoping. I talked to her the other day, and she'll be coming because she had some really good, talks about this decision in Virginia, and I thought, "But boy, somebody wants to talk about the history of the Voting Rights Act, having Jennifer McClellan on Friday is gonna be great," and we will be talking about the group that does the separation of church and state group, and that will be good too. So, you have a good night. I wish you lived close by, friend, because I made some bolognese. I made bolognese.
I
I'm gonna
I
make
would love it 'cause
Oh, this is what I say. Everybody, you can listen in for a minute. I am going down Monday, tomorrow, to see Spanberger sign the family-friendly economy bill.
oh, you're going!
I get to go to the mansion tomorrow, everybody. Brianna Soul, the delegate, who knows how much we worked on that with her, and they were a sponsor at the summit years ago. Me and Robin are gonna meet down there for lunch, and then we're gonna go over to the signing, and I'm gonna get to go to the mansion.
Awesome.
I get okay, but I'll be in Williamsburg, and I am staying the night. Are you back in Eastern Shore, or are you in Norfolk?
I'm back on the Eastern Shore.
Damn it. So I was gonna say I'm going there.
Meet you at Surf Rider.
I'll meet you at Surfrider, but I was thinking I'd bring you a jar of bolognese sauce, but I'm staying down there at my condo Monday. Tomorrow night, I'll be at my condo, and I'm leaving the Tuesday morning. I gotta get back.
American United for Separation of Church and State. That's
There
what we're
she
doing tonight.
goes. There's Belle. She's so great. No, I'm laughing. Hey, if you want that bolognese sauce, I can bring it down.
I know, but you'll figure it out. We'll
I'm
get it.
sad that if you were in Norfolk, you'd be able to do it. All right, everybody. I digress over bolognese. Love you all,
Well,
and
I'm happy to see everybody. Some folks I haven't seen before, so I'm
I
glad you guys
know.
were with us tonight. So thank
These
you for hanging out because
in this
we
room worked hard on yes. Jennifer Strozer, I mean, come on, and Bella, we worked hard. So we yeah, yeah, whatever. They don't know who they messed with. That's all I'm gonna say to you. All right. Bye, everybody. Good night.
bye everybody. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Uh-oh, I would hit that button. Hold on.